Who gets anxious? It's normal. Absolutely all of us get anxious. I'm definitely anxious tonight. Not about you lot. You lot are fine. You lot are in my comfort zone. That's not in my comfort zone. Okay? Who likes change? Any of you actually like change? I like change when it's good. I don't like change when it's bad. I don't like it when things change. And I think that's quite normal. So I think that people getting anxious about change is incredibly normal. Our clocks in this building have been stuck on 6:15 for the last 2 weeks. Is it driving me up the wall? You bet it is. Because I keep thinking I should be at home. Yeah? So it's quite normal to be affected by change. But what happens with people on the autistic spectrum is that they're more affected by change. So just give me a quick show of hands. Who are parents? And who are, I know there's a few staff from different agencies booked on tonight. Oh, you're in the minority. We'll be kind, yeah. Okay, so it's thinking about what can we do. Change is inevitable. Change happens all the time. And it can be from something massive, like a house move, to something tiny. So in the last couple of days, I drew up at work yesterday and every window on the front of the building was open. And I thought, oh, heating's gone on then. Because last week we were all sat shivering. So when I saw every window open, I could automatically think, oh, something's changed. It must be the heating, okay? Because I'm what's called neurotypical. Has everybody heard that term? Is that a term you're familiar with? Neurotypical is the opposite to autistic. So there is no such thing as normal. And I would be highly offended if anybody ever referred to me as being normal. I'm definitely not. Thank you, Fiona. I'm definitely not normal. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to be. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be. But neurotypical is sort of those of us that are not on the autistic spectrum. So if you hear that term, it's just sort of everybody else. So I could look at the open windows and think something's changed. Yeah, because I know we were all sat here shivering last week. So I could relate to that. We've all gone round yesterday and today going, it's hot in here. At lunchtime, I was so hot, I was like thinking, am I starting the menopause? Am I having a hot flush? So I had to ask the only man in the building to see whether it was actually hot or whether it was me. And apparently it was hot, so that's fine. It should cool down in here a bit as we go on, because the heating goes off at 6 o'clock. so we should be all right by the end of the night. It should. We'll not all be sat here. Okay. So why can I do that? Why can I recognise a change so quickly? Why can I cope with a change, but somebody on the autistic spectrum can't? Okay. So has anybody ever heard of something called executive functioning? So executive functioning is the ability that helps you to process, regulate, control and manage our thoughts and actions. So when I see something, I can then predict what else has happened around that thing. So as soon as I saw the windows open, I knew, because I've got good, generally, executive functioning. So I can manage that. I can see that something's changed and I can manage it. It includes an ability to plan, to use my working memory, to keep my attention, to problem solve, to have verbal reasoning, to have inhibition and cognitive flexibility. That's all a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But basically it means that I can manage myself. When something goes wrong, sorry I'm moving too much, Martha. When something goes wrong, I've got the ability to think that through, to plan what my response might be, and to act in an appropriate way. What happens with somebody on the autistic spectrum, and again, this might apply to your child, it might not apply to your child, it's different for every single person, but to some extent, they will have problems with their executive functioning. So it's about your ability to read what's happening around you, to figure out what people are going to do, to respond when something goes wrong, and to act differently if needed. So all of the time I'm using my executive functioning to figure out what I need to do, how I need to do it, and in what way I need to do it. If you've not got the ability to do that, then even the tiniest change is going to raise your anxiety, because you can't predict what's going to happen next, okay? So I hear lots of people, when they're talking about kids on the spectrum, or adults on the spectrum, getting anxious. People talk about that there's this need to control. I don't buy into that philosophy. I think there's a need to feel safe. And if I feel safe, I can manage myself. If I don't feel safe because something's unpredictable, then it's going to raise my anxiety. But anxiety is perfectly normal. We all get anxious. Yeah? I get anxious just the same as everybody else. But it's about my ability to manage it, and about my ability to think, what will I do if? Okay? So for instance, yesterday morning, I had a bit of a row with my twins, they're 11. They're in P7, and it was the final school photo of P7. My son got out of the shower with washed hair and put a woolly hat on. I did try to explain to him that if he had a woolly hat on, then his hair's not going to look particularly good in the school photo. My daughter, who's got very, very long hair, was refusing to have anything done with it, so it was just like a curtain round her face. Yeah? So before I'd even left the house yesterday morning, I'd already had a bit of a debate with these two about what they would look like in the school photo. And I know that they hate school photos, but actually the grannies love a school photo, don't they? Yeah, so we want a decent school photo. I got a shockingly awful one the year before last, where they both looked awful because I'd forgotten it was school photo day. So that was a particularly bad school photo, but the grannies still loved it. Okay? So as I'm moving out of my house, I'm already being moved away from what we call our baseline. So we all get out of bed in the morning and we're at a baseline. We're thinking about how we feel. And if something irritates you, annoys you, winds you up, does your head in, it's going to move you slightly away from your baseline. But because I'm an adult, debatable I know, and because I'm very in touch with my inner child, and because I'm neurotypical, I can then do something about it. So my anxiety doesn't keep climbing. Yeah, can't cope. I do something to moderate it. So yesterday morning, it was extremely loud rock music in the car as I was singing along. Fiona on reception actually said to me, "You sound a bit husky this morning. Are you going down?" Something. I was like, "No, I was singing." Yeah, okay. But because I've got that ability to executively function and plan and think about what's happening around me, I can cope with change most of the time. Okay? If I'm having a particularly bad day, it might be harder. I've also got what we call theory of mind. Has anybody heard that term? So theory of mind refers to the notion that many autistic individuals do not understand that other people have their own plans, thoughts and points of view. So it's about accepting that somebody is different to you. Lots of autistic kids are highly dependent on one or both parents. With all due respect to the dads in here, it is usually mum. Okay? I don't know why, but it is usually mum. Sometimes it's dad. I've worked with one kid, massively dependent on dad. Okay? That's because if I've got a theory of mind, I know that you're different to me. I can look at you and tell you're different to me, and I can think, well, there might be some things we have in common, and there might be lots of things that we don't have in common, but that's okay. Yeah? I don't have a problem with that, because I've got theory of minds. If you haven't got theory of minds, or a really developed theory of minds, it becomes incredibly difficult to see other people as having a different perspective to you. I've worked with kids with very complex autism who even struggle, because of that lack of theory of mind, to see mum or dad as a separate entity to them. So they think that you know exactly what they're thinking and feeling. So therefore, because you don't know what they're thinking and feeling, because you're not a mind reader, that then creates anxiety because you then don't react in the way that they think you should be reacting. I've even worked with children who, if they are separate to mum or dad, depending on who the dependent person is, they don't know that that person still exists. So huge issues with going to school and attachments and anxiety about being separated from the person that makes you feel really safe. Because if you're not there and I can't see you, do you still exist? Okay, so that's obviously in a very, very complex difficulties with theory of mind. So it's not often that complex, but there are difficulties. So if they think that you know what they're thinking, but you don't, and then their anxiety raises, they're not going to deal with it very well. So they also have difficulty understanding other people's beliefs, attitudes and emotions. Okay? Don't buy into the philosophy that people with autism don't have empathy. They do have empathy, but it's difficult often for them to see why you're upset, why you're happy, why you're... so to be able to read that emotion and know that something's happening can be incredibly complicated. So whenever we bring a change into a situation, it creates great anxiety because they don't have the ability to predict what will happen if, what will happen when, how will that be. So all day today, all the members of staff in this building have been winding me up something chronic because I was being filmed tonight. So I arrived this morning with a set of clean clothes, just in case I spilled my lunch down me, because I've got soup for my lunch, and I thought if I spill soup all down the front of me, I'm just going to panic, aren't I? So they've all been really horrible to me all day. I'm very upset not. But it's about because something's out of your comfort zone. So we would all experience that, but that becomes even more difficult when you haven't got that ability to predict what will happen if, what will happen when, how will I manage that. Okay, so if we start to think about changes that might happen in a child's life, give me some examples of massive change that might happen in your child's life. Yes?
Going to secondary school.
Absolutely. Huge one. Any more?
Separating.
Yes?
Death of a parent.
Death of a parent, huge. Parents separating is huge.
Falling out with friends.
Falling out of friends is a massive one. Oh, and you built a house. That's a huge change. Okay, so if we think about massive changes that kids have to deal with, things like bereavement, whether that be a pet, a grandparent, a parent, a sibling, bereavement is a huge change for any of us. But again, if you've not got that ability to think and feel in the same way and process that information, it becomes doubly difficult. A house move, even a car change. Have you ever noticed all cars smell differently? And if you've bought a brand new car, it smells very differently. Okay? The seats feel different. The engine sounds different. The seatbelt might sit in a different place. These are all change, and it's dependent on how that child deals with change, whether they're going to manage that. Parents splitting up New babies. Anybody brought a new baby into the mix? Yeah? Did they cope?
Initially, but
Yep.
now it's not so good.
No. Yeah. But again, that is due to theory of minds and that executive functioning. What does that baby need? What does that baby want? Why is mum spending so much time with that baby? Yeah? Why is that baby crying? Why is that baby smelling?
Stealing my toys.
Yeah, why is that baby stealing my toys? Why can't that baby play with me? Yeah, there's lots of different facets to it. School moves are massive. I think we'd all know that. Christmas is coming, folks. Whose kid copes for Christmas? Yeah, oh well, you're lucky. Because loads of kids on the spectrum do not cope with Christmas. Particularly at school, because there are massive amounts of change at school. We're in the run-up to Christmas, so you've got all the Christmas parties, you've got the Christmas show, you've got the carol concert, you've got the Christmas arts. You might be writing about Christmas. The teacher's decorated the classroom. Yeah? Your mum's decorated the house. Yeah? It's tinsel overload in our house. Yeah? So it's all, again, very much dependent on the individual, what they can cope with and what they can't cope with. I was talking to one mum this morning who was saying she's going to have to sit the tree in its box in the corner of the room from about next week. Yeah, because he doesn't cope with sudden change. But if she does it over a period of time, it'll be all right. So it'll be in the box in the corner for 5 days. Then it'll be out of the box for 5 days. Then she'll actually put it up on the stand for 5 days. Then she'll actually get the branches out for 5 days. And he'll acclimatise himself to it. If she just put it up, he would absolutely freak. Okay? So, because he really doesn't cope with that level of change. Holidays, we all think holidays are great, aren't we? But people with autism can really struggle with holidays because there are massive amount of changes that are in that, but there are ways that we can mitigate this. Decorating. Yeah, who paints the house? Well, Anne built a house, not literally herself. Yeah. But even when we move the furniture, even if we put new curtains up, it's all a change, and those are quite massive changes when you're having difficulty processing what's happening in your environment. So a bit smaller change. Oh no, these are still big. Big ones, they're not massive, they're big. Okay? So, going from inside to outside, would you ever have considered that as being a change? No, but it is. Because it's cold out there and it's hot in here. And it's hot in here and it's cold out there. So even a change in temperature, depending on what the weather's doing, whether it's raining, it's snowing, it's windy, whatever it happens to be on that day, the sun's shining, that is a change. And if that's a change that I'm not expecting, then that can be really difficult for me to process. Home to car to school. Yeah, lots of kids really struggle with that transition from one place to another because it's quite overwhelming when you've got to do it in different chunks. Even classroom to playground to classroom, they're all what we call transitions. So a lot of the time, you mentioned the transitions fair. So we often think of transitions as being a big change, but actually every time we're going from one activity to another is a transition, and that can be really quite tricky for some kids. Going to the shops is a change. Meal times are a change. Bedtimes are a definite change. Who's got a kid who struggles to go to bed? I've been battling with it for years. It is a bit better at the moment. Okay, changing a route in a car. Who's got a child that you have to drive the exact same routes every time?
We sometimes do the same trip during the day, and there's certain things that he really likes to see. He can't say the word, but he makes a noise from this thing. And in the dark, we did the same route, and
I can't see it.
And he's making the noises, and I'm like, how do you even know? That's there. He just knew.
It just knew.
We're here.
Yes.
This is a bit. The thing's over there. Just.
Yeah. Because what we have to acknowledge is that that kids with autism have massive skills.
I don't know what that means.
Massively intuitively. Yeah, he might be able to recognise a certain point in the journey without even being able to see it. Yeah. So it's not all about problems. It's about, well, what can I do that's different? Where does my skill lie? New clothes are a huge one. I was talking to a mum this morning. I saw her boy and he'd got these really lovely camouflage joggers on. I was like, oh, they're seriously nice joggers. And he was like, oh, yeah, they are, aren't they? I really like these, yeah. So she's got 3 pairs of them and she's had to wash them repeatedly in order to get them to the same level of softness, yeah, for him to be able to wear them. One pair had a hole in the knee, yeah, and they were his favourite pair. But she managed to get him to swap them once they were on holiday because they didn't have a washing machine. so she was able to, because she'd washed them up tons and tons of times already, because sometimes new clothes, the sensory overstimulation of new clothes can just be too much. And new food can be a massive issue. Who's got a selective eater? Yeah, so a selective eater is a kid that has a very, your kid will eat out.
Aye, because he's forced.
Yeah. So it's a child who has a very repetitive diet because that feels safe. And in all honesty, don't we all hold on to things that make us feel safe? Okay? That's normal. That's natural. Okay? But if it's a person with autism, we start saying that they're controlling. They're not controlling, they just want to feel safe. That's normal. Okay? Changes in the day. These are some you might not have thought about. Internal changes. Is my bladder full? Is my bladder empty? Can I actually tell when my bladder is full or my bladder is empty? Who's had a child that's been difficult to toilet train? Anybody? Yeah? What? Yeah. Because actually I might not have that ability. With limited executive functioning and poor sensory processing, to recognise that my bladder's full. We have tons of kids who really struggle with bowel movements, particularly bowel movements in a toilet that they're not familiar with. So I come across loads of kids who won't have a bowel movement at school and will hold it in until they get home. So then you end up with a kid that's chronically constipated because they're constantly holding it in. Are you empty or full? Are you hungry? A lot of anxiety happens when we've moved away from how we feel comfortable. So if we consider that we feel comfortable when we are warm enough, when we've got enough energy, and when we are not hungry, if you then start to get hungry, that alone can raise your anxiety. So I mean, I can remember this with my daughter. Peaks and troughs in blood sugar can be quite common with some children, and we did get to the point where we recognised that this was a real anxiety trigger for her as a toddler, and we just used to say, chuck a biscuit at her. Because if she was full, the anxiety went down. Are you tired? Yeah, anxiety is always worse if you're tired. If you've had a long day, if you've had things that are quite stressful, you're not going to cope with change on that sort of day because you're going to be so far away from your baseline that you're not going to be able to cope. External changes. Is the TV on? Is the TV off? Can I cope with background noise? I work with 2 boys with the same name, which gets really confusing. One boy likes music on in the background. It really helps him to concentrate. The other boy hates music in the background, causes him great anxiety. Yeah, so again, it's purely personal. What I could just think, oh, that's annoying me, but I can get on with that, might not be possible for somebody with high anxiety levels. So I can hear that projector, but I know it's that projector, and I'm okay with that. That's not a problem to me. I was at a friend's house, it's a few years ago this, he's my age and he's on the autistic spectrum, and we were trying to have a conversation, and I could see his anxiety going up and up and up. I was like, what on earth is the matter, Kev? I can see that you're not okay. What's going on? And he was like, I can hear something. There's something happening that's really winding me up. And me and his wife were sat there going, I can't hear anything. Yeah, no, we can't hear anything. And it took him about 10 minutes to search the room to find out what the noise was, because he couldn't cope with it. So we had to eradicate it, and it was because he'd left his laptop on standby. And he could hear the laptop on standby. Me and his wife couldn't hear it at all, so it wasn't anxiety raising for us, but we recognised that it was anxiety raising for him, so allowed him to do something about it. Because if we'd have stopped him, his anxiety would have gone through the roof. So, siblings coming in and out, you know, if you've got brothers and sisters that are coming in and out, babies crying, babies coming into my house, yeah. Some kids cope, some kids don't. I've got a sister who's 3 years older than me, and apparently I ruined her life. Just by being born. Yeah, we're still not close. We do speak to each other, but I don't think she's ever quite got over the fact that I ruined her life. Parents coming in and out of the house, parents working shifts can be quite difficult. Parents who work offshore, so are only back for certain periods of time. It's quite a massive change. Even the light and the dark can be a massive change. Whose anxiety gets worse during winter months? I hate it. I'll cope, I will cope up till the end of December, because I am an extremely big child and I love Christmas, and that will get me through. January and February, I don't like it at all. I really can't cope with the cold, I can't cope with the dark. Yeah. So at 4:30 this afternoon, it was dark. I actually commented on it to a colleague. That's not normal, really, is it? Okay, so when we change the clocks, when the seasons change, these are all things that if you are anxious about things that are changing, can create more anxiety. Okay, so the things that you might not necessarily think about, but are important. So we need to learn to cope with change, okay? So what I say to lots of parents is, it's thinking about what your child can cope with and what they can't cope with, and how we prepare them to cope differently. Because what happens with a neurotypical child is that they learn things instinctively, so they'll pick up what's happening with other people around them. They'll understand that things change. They'll understand seasons as they get older. Really difficult with small kids, when you're trying to do bedtime routines in the middle of the summer when it doesn't get dark until midnight. Yeah? So that's tricky for any child. But they learn to understand that things do change and things do evolve. A child on the autistic spectrum, because of the theory of mind, because of the executive functioning, that's going to be harder. They're not necessarily going to pick up on that instinctively. They're going to need to be taught how to do that thing. So it is really, really important that we show kids that change can be good. Because we've all got this thing about, oh, we can't ever change, they're autistic. Yeah, but change can be good. So it's really positive to teach your child, because if we start to recognise what change is, and that change sometimes is good, sometimes is bad, it helps us to understand it. But what they need most importantly is for you not to have a flap if there's an unexpected change. Okay? Who's flapped when there's been an unexpected change? Yeah. I'm not polyperfect, I don't get it right all the time. Yeah, so when things change, that's going to create anxiety for some children. Okay? If we then panic because that thing's changed, that'll then create more panic in the child. Okay? So it's about, and sometimes we might need to change things deliberately. Okay, so I know of one mum who knew that the swimming baths were shut, and she knew that her daughter would have a complete meltdown, but she took her anyway, because she needed her to see that not all the time the swimming pool was open, and she was able to have that meltdown in private. Yeah, because there was nobody else there, because everybody knew the swimming pool was shut. But it taught her daughter that sometimes things change and there's nothing we can do about it, and that that's okay. We can do something different. But But not panicking is really important. So how are we going to help? So we get back to this thing where people, often education, say that people with autism are controlling. People with autism are not controlling. People with autism, like all of us, but more exaggerated, need to feel safe. If you don't feel safe, your anxiety goes up, you don't manage, you're potentially going to have a meltdown or a tantrum. You know, I don't like the word tantrum, but I suppose if it's a 3-year-old then it's an appropriate word. But you're not going to be able to cope with that thing, and your behaviour is going to change in line with something that you feel negatively about. So it's important that we teach change, okay? With all kids with autism, it's important that we teach how things are, because they don't. If you think about social rules, kids in the playground pick up on what the social rules are. Kids on the autistic spectrum often don't pick up on what the rules are, and then get it wrong, and then get highly anxious because they've got it wrong, okay? But if we don't teach them, they're not going to learn it. So a lot of the time we're thinking about how we teach things differently for somebody on the autistic spectrum. So sometimes we can use timers. Doesn't work for every kid, does work for some children. So it's thinking about, some children really struggle when things are stopping and starting. That can be a struggle, okay? So it's thinking about, do we think about something stopping? Is that a negative or a positive? Don't all shout at once. It depends what it is. Okay, so say for instance, you're trying to get your darling son, who I know very well, off the Xbox. Is that change negative or positive?
Positive for me, negative for him.
Yes. Okay. So it's thinking about the stopping of something that's motivating to me is quite difficult. Okay. So sometimes we just even need to think about our language. We're not stopping that thing, we're starting something else. Okay? Even that subtlety can work for some children. Some children work really well with timers. If we say, right, we've got 5 minutes left until there's going to be a change. Some kids don't. Every child on the autistic spectrum is different. So it's about recognising what works for your child and your child alone. Yeah, because there will be a different pattern for each child. And one day a timer will work, and the next day it might not work, but that depends on what else has happened during your day and how able you are to cope with that. Okay, we use a lot of visual timetables. Is anybody working with visual timetables with their kids? Yeah, a couple of hands, yeah. Visuals are really important. Lots of us are visual learners. So if I just hear something, say for instance computers. Computers are not my area of expertise in any stretch of the imagination. They freak me out. I can do the basics, but if I try to do anything different, I'm going to get highly anxious about it, okay? So at the moment I'm doing some research and I'm having to use SurveyMonkey, okay? Now I did some research 6 months ago using SurveyMonkey, and when I went back on it last week, they've changed it. Okay, was I anxious? Yes. Yeah, because it's not my area of comfort. So it's thinking about how we make people comfortable. And lots of us like visual things to happen. My husband's extremely competent on a computer, so tries to tell me what to do. It don't work. I have to actually do it. I have to see it, and I have to experience it. If I've not done that, I can't do it. So it's also important to figure out where your child is on that level of processing. Does it work for them to see things? Does it work for them to hear things? Does it work for them to do things? I'm definitely a doer. It's called kinesthetic learning. I have to actually physically do it myself in order to be able to remember it. So visual timetables really work. Lots of schools use visual timetables to help children to know what's coming next. We often use what we call now and next cards. So it's activities of now and next. It might be a full visual timetable for that child of what they're going to do that day. It can even be, I've got a bit of a thing about whiteboards. I do love a whiteboard. So if you think about that whiteboard over there or this one up here, depending on where you sat, I worked with a mum for many years, and she rang me one day when everything had been going really, really well, and I've not heard from her for a while. And she rang me and said, it's an absolute nightmare again, I can't cope, this is not happening. I was like, all right, I'll come tomorrow. Yeah, so I piled up at her house, and we were quite close by this point, so she'd got the kettle on. I do like parents that put the kettle on. I've got Fiona very well trained. So I walked into their kitchen, and the whiteboard's empty. And I went, why is the whiteboard empty? Because previously we'd had it all set out in this is what you're doing on each day. And this is how you're going to do it, this is when you're going to do it. And I said, why is your whiteboard empty? It wasn't used in it. I said, it bloody clearly was, because you've wiped it clean and now we can't cope. So whether you thought he was looking at it or not, he was looking at it. It was used. He was using it to feel safe. And when she thought he wasn't using it, or she thought he was okay, she got rid of it. And it deteriorated again. So once we reinstigated it, he went back up again because he felt safe. So visual things are really important. I worked with my original training as a learning disability nurse, and I can remember working with a lady many, many years ago, a lady with learning disabilities and autism, and every time we took her out in the car, she attacked the driver. Okay. It wasn't good. We had a few near misses. Okay. But when we started really thinking about this, we thought, actually, is she anxious? Because although we've said where we're going, does she really know where we're going? Okay. So is that an anxiety trigger for her? So this is in the days before technology. So we gave her a photograph album. So we'd have a photograph album, and all the photos were all the places we went to on a regular basis. So when we got in the car, we would turn the photograph album to the place that we were going, and she stopped attacking people driving because she knew where she was going. Yeah, so the anxiety of not knowing where she was going created massive pressure on her, which then she would then react to it because she didn't know. She was non-verbal and she wasn't able to say, where on earth are we going? Yeah, so her way of saying stop, don't go any further, was to attack the driver because then you've got to stop. Okay? We've got some fabulous technology nowadays, so we don't need to do things like that. So I've used things like Google Maps on an iPad or an iPhone for kids that really struggle with that transition to one place to another. I worked with a lad whose granny lived in Elgin, so Elgin's quite a drive if you're highly anxious. And again, he was attacking mum on a regular basis because he just couldn't cope with he knew he was going to granny's, but it was how long would it take, what would the traffic be like, yeah, what would happen when he got there, was he really going to granny's? So we Google mapped, and he was able to see exactly where he was going. You can Google map pretty much anything, Google Earth. You can actually check out places where you're going to. You can look at real life, real-time pictures of where you're going to. Yeah, kids on the spectrum have taught me this because I'm not very technical. So they've actually shown me where I lived in Doncaster. Yeah. We've actually searched for the house I lived in and saw my car on the drive. Yeah, because it was sort of just after I'd moved up here. So things like that can really relieve the anxiety. If you know where you're going, if you know what's going to happen, can really relieve anxiety. Underpinning I talk about a lot. Obviously with this dulcet accent, I'm not from up here. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to where I'm from?
You just told us.
Did I?
Doncaster.
Oh. Doncaster's in Yorkshire, not the nice bit of Yorkshire. Okay. So I come from a mining community, so those of you that have never lived in a mining community might not know, but you've got a mine shaft in one area, but actually the seams of coal underneath the ground might run for miles. Okay, so we have a lot of what's called subsidence where your house starts to sink into the mine, not into the mine shaft, into the sea. So this happened with a terraced house that I lived in many, many years ago. My kitchen started to sink into the ground and pull away from the rest of the house because it was an extension. So I had to have it tied back in and underpinned. And I talk a lot about underpinning. If you've got firm foundations, you can cope. If you've not got firm foundations, you are never going to cope. You are going to sink. Okay, so if we think about what can my child cope with, how can my child manage this, is this a day where my child can actually do this, then you're underpinning them. You're thinking about what can they cope with. Social stories, anybody been on social stories training? One at least, yeah. Well, you can all put your name down for social stories training then, because social stories are fantastic for a lot of kids on the spectrum. Again, they're not going to work for everybody, but being able to understand the social behaviour, a reason why something's happening, helps you to manage that situation. So I was writing a social story yesterday for a girl in P7 who has had a bit of a fallout with her best friend. So huge anxiety, doesn't understand why she's had a fallout with this friend, the fact that she can be friends with other people. So it's trying to get her to see that this is okay. This happens. It's okay to be friends with a group of people. You shouldn't rely on one person. Yeah, and it's underpinning a social behaviour, because understanding social behaviour is incredibly difficult for kids on the spectrum. Google Maps we've talked about. Picture books about holidays. I've done loads of these for smaller kids. Older kids I make them do their own. So it's thinking about, where am I going? What will that look like? What will I need to do? Yeah, so the internet is the most wonderful invention for kids on the spectrum, because you can look at it. There isn't any unknown. If you're going to a certain hotel, you can look at the lobby of that hotel, you can look at the front of that hotel, you can look at the pool of that hotel, you can look at the dining room of that hotel, you can look at a specific bedroom layout of that hotel. And all of that helps you to feel safe. We'd feel excited about, well, I generally feel excited about going on holiday, yeah? And I don't, I might have searched it and I might have looked at reviews, but I might not need to look at exact pictures. Because I'm neurotypical and I'm okay, I'll know that it'll be reasonable because people have said it's reasonable. Okay, but if you're going to something and you haven't got that ability to picture what that's going to look like, how big's that going to be? How big is that pool? Does it have a slide? Does it, it all becomes quite difficult because it's unknown. And anything that's unpredictable is extremely anxiety raising for kids on the spectrum. And keeping to a routine, a repetition. Lots of kids need things to be done in a certain way, in a certain process. Some kids really need it to be quite regimented, and they really thrive on that routine because it helps them to feel safe. And if you know what's coming next, your anxiety is not going to rise. If it's unpredictable, it's going to create anxiety. So if we can make things as predictable as possible, within real life, because obviously in real life things might occasionally go wrong, then that makes you feel safe, if you know what's going to happen. So sometimes we need to think about controlling the environment in order for people to feel safe. So now I was telling you about two boys that I've worked with, exact same name, and they're the same age, which, oh God, was confusing. One boy needs the radio on, or one boy really can't have the radio on. Yeah, so allowing kids to say what they can and can't cope with, acknowledging what they can and can't cope with is really important. If we say, well, you're just going to have to get on with it, it's like trying to ram a square peg into a round hole. It's not going to fit. And it's going to be anxiety raising, okay? But that's not about your child wanting to control you. It's about your child wanting to feel safe, okay? So sometimes putting things in place that really underpin them really, really helps. So you know, you can set secure spaces. You can set your TV to a certain volume. I work with a wee girl at the moment. She's 5, and she's absolutely obsessed with Peppa the Pig, which is lovely. She can't cope with adverts. Okay, so every time an advert comes on, Peppa the Pig's finished. That's a transition. Okay, she can't cope with that. So has a complete meltdown every time the adverts come on. Well, we can control that. We've got the internet, marvellous thing. Yeah, you can record that programme without the adverts being in it. Okay, so now Mum just has a stock of Peppa Pig with no adverts. That's, you know, so we can control certain things within our environment, and that's not unreasonable. You know, there might be certain routines that you want to stick to every day, because again, that's quite gives you quite a lot of security. Who has, when they get up in the morning, who has a routine that they stick to every day? Apart from on a weekend. You know, certain things happen at certain times, in certain ways in my house in the morning, because if they didn't, none of us would ever get out of the door. Okay, that routine makes me feel good. I've got my husband really, really well trained, and he brings me a cup of coffee in bed every morning. Yeah, every morning. It's taken me 20 years, but it's good, yeah. He worked away for a bit last year. Whoa! That completely changed my routine. Hey?
Did you train Imogen then?
No. So, she was too young at that point.
Now though?
Now, I could train her now. Yeah, we'd be alright. Okay? But any slight change, yeah? It's like when your kids say to you first thing in the morning when I'm trying to get ready for work, "Mum, I forgot to tell you that you need to fill this form in." That's a change to my routine. I've just seen you look at your mum. I bet you do that all the time, don't you? "Oh, Mum, I've magically found this form out of my school bag that you need to fill in about a school trip."
It's been there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been there for 3 weeks, but I've not given you it. Yeah. So everything, even if it's just slight changes, can really throw us off. And we're adults, and we're neurotypical. So if you think that in relation to your child who is young and hasn't got the same sort of coping strategies that you've got, that can be incredibly disturbing. Who's got a set seat on their sofa?
Me.
I'm extremely institutionalised. Nobody's allowed to sit in my seat on the sofa. And do you know what? You can guarantee as soon as I get up, somebody sits in my spot. Whether it's a kid or a cat, there's always somebody in my spot. Now, I can't sit in any other place because I'm very institutionalised. I like that sameness. That's where I feel secure. That's where I can relax. That's normal. Ish. Okay. Sameness is really, really important. And it's also thinking about, what can I manage today? What have I already had to manage today? How far away from my baseline am I? If I've had a really, really bad day, if it's been really, really stressful, am I going to manage a change? So say, for instance, you want to take your child to buy a pair of shoes. Who loves shoe shopping with their children?
No.
Hideous. So, are you going to do that after a really, really stressful day at school? Yeah? If your child comes out of school and they're already pulling their hair out, are you going to go shoe shopping? Nah. Yeah. So it's thinking about, what can my child actually manage on any given day, and thinking about that underpinning. Is this possible? So with older children, or even just thinking about yourself managing a younger child, thinking about what can they feasibly manage today. Is this a good day? Is this a bad day? Are they tired? Are they hungry? Have they had a stressful day? Am I trying to take them somewhere new? What's happening in their lives? Is it pouring and I've got a kid who doesn't like rain? So it's thinking about, is this change possible today if something new is going to happen? How can I prepare my child to manage that new thing? What can I give them that enables them to know what's going to happen? Because sometimes if I don't know what's going to happen, my anxiety is raising. Okay? Now I went down to Boat Garden yesterday to see a child who is in P7. I've got a really good relationship with this child, but this child was having a really bad day. And actually managed to verbalise, I can't cope with seeing Rachel today. And I was like, that's absolutely fine. It's not a problem. Okay? The head teacher was all for forcing her to come to see me, and I was like, no, please don't, because you're going to ruin my relationship with her. But I've spoken to Mum today, and I've reiterated to Mum to say to the girl, it's not a problem. I wasn't upset, I wasn't angry. Next week we will be doing X, Y, and Z. I'm really looking forward to seeing her. Yeah? Because she's never ever refused to see me before. So I know that she must have been having a particularly bad day. She's fallen out with her best friend, same kid. Yeah. So what will make you feel secure? Do I need certain things with me? Do I need a visual timetable? Do I need Google Maps? Do I need an app on my phone that tells me where I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to react in a certain situation, what I'm supposed to do, what's my emergency plan if I get into this situation? So say for instance, I'll just use you for an example, Fiona, if you don't mind. So Fiona's son is 14, goes out a lot on his own. Yeah, so it's thinking about how is he going to manage that? How do you keep him safe? How do you check up on him? How does he know what he can and can't do? Well, it fluctuates, doesn't it, love? But it's all a process of him learning what can and can't be done. So what could we do that could actually make this possible? How am I going to make myself feel as secure as I can feasibly feel in this situation that I know is outside of my comfort zone? Okay, so this is definitely outside of my comfort zone, doing videos, okay? But there's a few familiar faces in this audience, so that's made me feel a bit better. There's a few people that I can direct things at that have lowered my anxiety, because I know that they know. I know at least there's a few people in here that are on the same wavelength as me, which lowers my anxiety. So what can I do to make this possible? So like I said this morning, I brought a different outfit with me just in case I spilled my lunch down the front of me. But sometimes kids have what we call a safe outfit, or a safe set of clothes that really make them feel comfortable. I used to work with a guy years ago. Yeah, does your child wear the same thing over and over again? Nothing, excellent. So I used to work with a guy many years ago, again, adult with learning disability, autistic, who would only wear navy jogging bottoms and a grey t-shirt, and it had to be the same navy jogging bottoms and grey t-shirt day in, day out. Yeah, we had about 20 sets, all from the same shop, because that felt comfortable, and that's okay. It's okay to feel comfortable. It's okay to wear the same thing over and over again. I have lots of kids that can't cope with school trousers because they're too tight, school polo shirts because they can't cope with the collar, labels in things can all be anxiety raising. Could I take a safe object with me? So could I have something in my pocket that makes me feel quite secure? Could I have a favourite toy with me? I often see, wee kids walking around with a car or a mobile phone. Yeah, I have to watch a YouTube video every time I see him, that's fine. That makes him feel safe.
Don't we all?
Makes him feel secure. I know that he'll have planned what he's going to show me.
Exciting.
Before he gets here. Yeah. So every time he gets here, he has the same drink. We go in the same room. We play
if you don't,
Yeah, we play the same game, and he'll always show me a YouTube video that he's found that week that he thinks will amuse me, and he does. He's got very good humour. So that sameness, I feel secure. If we manage to do all that, I can then get him to engage with other things. I once, never again, had to put him in a different room.
I know.
because the room that we usually go in was full. Oh, I got to do nothing.
You weren't here last week, over.
I was, and I know that I had an emergency with another kid, so I bet that completely threw him off, didn't it?
I'll just switch it to door for her.
Yes. Yeah. And I was on the phone to a 17-year-old that was in a terrible state, so I never actually made it. He did have somebody else with him though, I didn't just leave him. So, yes.
But he didn't stay with Sarah.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good.
Anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't good, but yeah, I was trying to deal with somebody in a terrible, terrible state. So routine's important. Feeling safe is important. Having people do things in set ways is important. Having clear boundaries is really important. So knowing what you can do, what you can't do. Having support to manage yourself in that environment. Often being set up to succeed is a lot more important than being caught when you fail. Yeah, because when we fail, that becomes a negative. That's going to raise our anxiety. So actually, if we're going into something that we know is going to be anxiety raising for that particular child, we need to massively underpin them before we even get there. If we do that, they're likely to succeed. You can give tons of positive reinforcement because it's been a success. That's not going to be feasible in every single situation that you go into. There are going to be situations where things go wrong, but it's about managing that calmly and concisely, because you always need an escape plan. Wherever you go, have an escape plan, because sometimes they're just not going to cope. So say for instance, if you're going to the cinema, you think it's a film that they're really going to like, but they might not. And they might get highly anxious. There might be sound effects or visual effects that are quite disturbing. You need an escape route, yeah? So you don't put yourself at the end of a row where you can't get out. You put yourself on an aisle. And it's always sort of trying to be one step ahead. What would I do if? Yeah? Where will I go if? And there are certain situations that really you have to question, does my child need to actually do that? You know, when I see kids being dragged around Tesco's, really? On a Saturday afternoon? I don't want to be in Tesco's on a Saturday afternoon. Nobody in the right mind would want to be in Tesco's on a Saturday afternoon. So I certainly don't want to be there if I'm 3. And I want all my clothes off. Yeah, because I really can't cope with that sensory overload. Yeah, I'm not going to cope with Tesco's on a Saturday afternoon, am I? Yeah, so it's thinking about all of the time, what can they manage? What is feasible? Underpinning, setting up to succeed. And I think that is the end of my slides. And I have no idea what time it is, because apparently it's 6:15. Anybody know what time it is?
7:20.
So, oh gosh, we've got to be out of here by 7:30. Any really quick questions? I can't talk the hind leg off a donkey, and once I got used to that, I were all right. Yes, my love.
How do you deal with separation anxiety?
Okay, so it depends about that theory of mind. It's thinking about, how old is your child? 7. So it's thinking about how do they perceive, do they understand where you are when you're not with them? No.
Well, you would think she would, but I don't know if she really does.
Right, okay. The thing to try, and it's always a try, because whilst it might work for one child, it might not work for another child, is, does she have a visual timetable in school?
I think
Okay, so what's worked with some of the kids I've worked with in the past is for mum also to have a visual timetable, so that she can look at the 2 timetables side by side, and she can see that when she's at playtime, you're in Tesco. When she's at lunchtime,
That gives her anxiety though.
that gives her more anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
She knows that I'm doing something like during school. She thinks that I'm not going to look after.
Okay. So what you would have at the end of your timetable is the 2 of you coming back together. So you would have a picture at the end of the day of school ending, a picture of you and home. Yeah, and then a picture of the 2 of you outside of your home, so she knows that you're coming back together.
Yeah, so the same like today, like tonight.
Yes.
I was late because of she wouldn't let me leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know where you're going or what time you're going to be back.
She doesn't want to, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's about helping her to feel secure. Mummy's going here, she will be back by. Yeah, so lots of kids can't tell the time at that age. But it's like, you will do this, this and this, Mummy will be back. Yeah, and pictures of the two of you coming back together can often be quite helpful. If she can't cope with you doing other stuff, you just have pictures of you in the house. Yeah, doing different jobs in the house during the day to help her to see that actually you do still exist when you're not there and you're definitely coming back. Yeah, because a lot of anxiety around separation is to, will you actually come back? Because if my theory of mind is not good, I don't necessarily recognise you as a separate entity to me. So if you go, part of me is gone. And that raises my anxiety. Okay? It won't work for every kid, but it does work for some kids. So it's a trial and error thing with everything that we advise. It's always trial and error, because for some kids it'll work, for some kids it won't. So, and then we think of something else if that don't work. Yes?
When fidget spinners have been banned from primary schools, what is an alternative for an autistic child who needs to fiddle or something?
Okay, so did everybody hear that? Okay, so it's thinking about fiddle toys. So fidget spinners became the craze of, was that last year or the year before?
Year before.
The year before. I've still got about 6 in my house that keep
You
cropping
get
up.
massive ones, eh?
Yeah, I've seen them, they're quite good, aren't they? So some kids have what we call, so there are 4 facets to an autism diagnosis. I'm going to try and do this really quickly because we've only got 10 minutes. And one of them is that their sensory processing is that they need to be doing something. Yeah, they need to be manipulating something because actually sitting still is incredibly difficult. So giving them something else that they can fiddle with is really important, and that needs to be acknowledged by the school. So it's thinking about safe things that your child can fiddle with. So we have fidget cubes, we have sort of putty type things, even something like blue tack. Something that can be manipulated over and over, something that feels comfortable in the hand. It's really specific to an individual child, what they will like and what they don't like. But yeah, actually having something to be able to do. It's called stimming. Has everybody heard the term stimming? We all do it to a certain extent. I wave my arms around a lot. I fiddle with my nails quite a lot. You might be a pen clicker. You might be a foot tapper. Yeah, is she a pen clicker? It drives me up the wall if there's a pen clicker. Yeah, absolutely. That's a stim. We all do it. It's a way of helping ourselves to feel balanced. So if you're on the autistic spectrum, you can often feel very unbalanced. That's a whole different session, but one we could potentially put on if you want, Alison. Okay, but it's about having something that you can then do to help yourself to feel balanced. So we should never stop a child stimming, but it's about giving an appropriate stim. So if he's not allowed a fidget spinner, what can he have instead?
He was told today to stop clicking the pen, but then he became distressed by that.
Okay, because a pen clicker is flipping annoying, if we're honest, yeah?
But teachers need an alternative.
Yes, so he most definitely needs an alternative, but it's an alternative that's not going to be disturbing to the rest of the class, yeah? Blue tack, squeezy things. Have you ever come across a fidget cube?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what, sorry?
They can be annoying too.
They can be annoying too, yeah. So it depends what. So if he's got a need to do something with his hands, it's what he can do that's acceptable within that social situation. Stress ball, yeah.
Where do you get all these toys?
Therapy at Amazon. Yeah. You can get pretty much anything off Amazon.
Or eBay.
Or eBay. Yeah. Don't go on the therapeutic websites because they charge you double what you should be paying for these things. Just go on Amazon. You know, just buy him some blue tack.
Well, that's what the school gave us. Was blue tack.
Blue tack. Harper's Bazaar we used to have. You can still get that online. They have loads of fidget stuff.
The Works has got a lot.
The Works has got loads of fidget stuff as well. Dirt cheap. Don't go on the therapy websites. Yeah, they think of a figure and double it. So,
What about chewing?
chewing, right, okay, so what have you sensed?
It's a little bit, so on the games pitch at school there's little bits of rubber, for instance. Choose it from there, it spits it out and gets it.
Yeah. So he's got is it he or she? She has got an oral motor problem. So it's about having to, so for her, it's very stimulating, very relaxing, very balancing to be constantly chewing something. So it's giving her something that's appropriate to chew, that she's not going to choke on, that's not going to be harmful, that she's not leaving all over the football pitch. Okay? I've got permission from some schools for kids to have chewing gum, give her toffees for a snack. Look at jewellery. Have you ever come across jewellery? Don't like it? That's fine.
I think it's the sort of thing she would want to chew.
Right, okay. Then it's finding, it's okay to chew. Using water bottles, a sports bottle that you've actually got to suck rather than squeeze is really good for oral motor kids. Give her a smoothie that she's got to suck through a straw for a snack. Again, it gives you the same sensation.
She can't do that all day.
She can't do it all day. But actually, if she's got little bits all through the day, it might help her to manage. If you find the right sensory processing thing that works for your child, each thing should last for an hour. If it's the right thing. So you have to trial and error. Is this the right thing for my child? If it's not going to keep them going. If it is, it'll last an hour. Okay. Oral motor's a bit different because oral motor doesn't last as long. So oral motor you tend to have to be doing to actually get that sensation from. So it might be worth looking at our other sensory systems and whether you could put in what we call a sensory diet. Has anybody heard of a sensory diet? Sort of deep pressure movement. I've got some handouts for ROT if anybody's got that sort of issue. That can be really beneficial. There's a booklet that we're just about to put on we will put it on the Pines website, Alison. I will send it you, I promise. And it's going to be on the Chip Plus website as well, which is all about sensory processing for kids on the autistic spectrum. So that might be something worthwhile looking at. And Alison, email me. I run in and out of this building like a blue-ass fly, so I'm like, oh, should have done that. It's actually in my diary to do it today, but it never happened. Email me and I will send you that document. Alison is technical. It will go on the website and then you'll be able to download it from the website, and that tells you all about sensory processing for kids on the spectrum and gives you loads of really practical ideas of how to manage that differently. One last quick question. Yeah.
Any recommended apps for planning?
Apps? Have you got an iPhone or are you on Android? Okay. If you actually put into your Android phone apps for autism, it will come up with a list. How old's your child?
It's coming up 10.
10. Is he technical? She? He?
Yeah, that's why I thought an app.
Yeah.
Phone,
okay. There's loads of timetabling type ones.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, there's some really good timetabling ones where they can put in where they need to be, how they need to be, particularly for kids going to secondary school, that can really help with the transitions because you're going from class to class. But actually, a lot of the kids with autism, although the transition to secondary can be really difficult, for some kids they actually thrive in that environment because it's very set. You will be doing maths at 9 o'clock, you will be doing English at 9:40, you will be in this room, it will be. Doesn't work for all kids because often there's too much fluctuation and it's a supply teacher, it's a different PSA, you've moved classroom. But it does work for lots of kids. So there are tons of timetabling ones. There are a couple of really good anxiety ones if you've got a kid who is really anxious. So there's it depends on their level of ability, but there's a really good one for quite able kids, a little bit older, called Molehill Mountain. Molehill Mountain, yeah, it's only just came out about 3 or 4 months ago. That's a really, really good one. Gets them to think about what they're thinking and feeling at different times of the day.
We're getting a lot of texts when we're doing something,
Yeah.
going to be doing something. And as much as you try and say, we're leaving then, we're leaving then, we're staying here, we're doing this, it just gets worse as the week progresses in the run.
Yeah, so actually an electronic timetable might really help. There's another really good one for anxiety called Zones of Regulation. And that thinks about whether you're in the red zone, the amber zone, or the green zone. So green's positive, amber's you're moving away from what you can cope with, and red is like, I'm losing the plot. So those are some good ones. But you can actually, even if you just Google apps for autism, it'll bring you up hundreds of them, because there's loads of stuff being written specifically for kids on the autistic spectrum. So there is some really good stuff out there. And I think I'm going to have to shut up, or we're going to end up locked in the building. So thank you all for coming. I hope that's been helpful, and look out for other things that we've got coming up.